next recording here. Okay, here we go. Sharing my screen. Welcome back. Whew. We needed that break. Did you accomplish all the things?
Yes.
Wow. All of them. All the things. Boom, boom, boom. That's got to feel good. I have never had that happen yet. So, but I did get back. And I thought, you know what? I better buckle down and settle on a test 2 date. And so I kind of picked March 27th. I'm open to suggestions. It's a Thursday. Kind of, as always, yeah.
Is that in the final exam?
Yeah, the final exam is.
Oh, so
But March 27th is test 2.
does that mean the exam schedule's out?
Sure is. I think it was posted on Valentine's Day. Oh, you thought I was divulging state secrets here. No. We are in S104 with another one of my classes, which is kind of confusing. But S104, have you guys written an exam in there before? It's like creaky chairs, and it's not the best scenario, but what's worse, I guess, is the 6 to 9 at night exam. So that's kind of a bummer. But then you'll be done. And how nice will that be? I was just talking to Leslie outside, and we're like, yeah, reading break, it wasn't long enough, you know, the usual. And then we're both like, but next stop, summer. So, pretty good. So we're on the rapid downhill from here. So I'll keep it at March 27th, but as always, if you kind of have opinions, other tests, whatever, then let me know. Otherwise, I keep it at March 27th. I had to cut some sections to make that happen, but that's okay. They were sections I didn't like anyways. And that we didn't need, I should clarify that. Okay. I just finished these notes. I think I'm confessing too much. And I just posted these notes before class, but we'll work through section 6.1 on simple interest. Oh yeah, the reading. Oh yeah, well, we'll work through it. And then we'll work through chapter 6, most of chapter 6 in the next couple of weeks. And it's the financial math section, which is 1, very useful, and 2, pretty fun. So that's good. And it seems to be our pace that we do about 1 section a day. I was hoping to pick it up, but then I was take it nice and slow. And then we'll get into chapter 7, cut some sections there. Don't need them. And then, so chapter 6 and chapter 7 will be test 2. And then little blip in chapter 8. And then we call it a day. Okay. So I outlined what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. Okay, good. That is what I wanted to say. So today, we're going to introduce financial math. Like I said, if you've taken business math, Math 114, well, this will all be a review. In fact, we're not going to go nearly as deep, right? Because we're only doing it for a little section, but just some core concepts, okay? Things we call the time value of money, okay? And so what that means is if you take $100 and you take it to the bank and they promise you some interest, a year from now, you don't just have $100, you have 100 and some odd dollars. So we need to be able to figure out what that some odd is, right? And so, and same thing, if you borrow $100, we all know that you need to pay back more than $100 to be rid of that debt, right? And so just kind of navigating those, the time value of money, right? Doesn't just stay stagnant. There's interest involved. And she's really tripping me up with her notation. In the beginning, it's fine. It's this A that I don't like. But as we know, it costs to borrow money. And essentially the rent that you pay to use money that isn't yours is the interest. And so there's going to be some principal amount or some present value. We're going to denote that by P. And so here, is this separate? That's me talking to myself more than, yeah, okay. And so P is going to be the principal or present value. It's in that blurb, but just nice to see it. So that principal is kind of the initial amount of money. Whether you deposit it at the bank or you borrowed it, it behaves the same, right? And so this is the initial amount of money. We have to pay interest, blah, 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 blah. And let me just read this. Okay, good. You can read it. It's just kind of leading us up to this formula. We're going to jump right into it. So if an amount P is borrowed for a time T, now this is where I want to specify that this T is time in years. So T, you always have to convert it to years, right? But we can talk about, 3 months is what in years? 3 over 12, right? And so some of the main kind of things to keep in mind is that we have, what are some go-tos? We have 365 days in a year, where we can assume in a year, there are 52 weeks and there are 12 months. Right? Those are assumptions that we can start off with. Yeah. So then I can say, oh, I borrowed money for 45 days. How long would that be in terms of years? All right, let's see here. So for example, 45 days, T would be 45 over 365 as a fraction of a year. How about 14 weeks? T would be 14. Oh, that doesn't look like 14. 14 over 52. Okay. And so on and so forth, right? And so one of the first things that we're going to do is just take the time and make sure that it's in years or convert it to years. Okay. So if an amount P, which is that principal amount or the initial amount of money, is borrowed for a time T in years at an interest rate of R, so a lowercase r, and R has to be, what color can I use here? Orange. Aren't you glad? R is the interest rate as a decimal, right? So usually we say a rate of 3% or something like that. But in terms of our math, we have to use the decimal version. Okay? So the interest rate as a decimal. So for example, if if the rate is 3%, R is 0.03. If the rate is 4.5%, the R is 0.045, or just in general, divide by 100 to ditch that percentage. Per time period T, so per year, then the simple interest is given by this. Now they don't define capital I, so that's the last thing we need to define. But I, can I do this? I is the amount of interest. It's important that you recognize that it's the amount, so a dollar amount of interest, okay, that you either get paid or that you have to pay to the bank. Okay? So this is going to be a dollar amount. So if I is the amount of interest that you can earn, it's always more fun to think about what you can earn, right? You go to the bank and you give them $100 or even $1, doesn't matter. They might not take $1 though, but you can give them $100 and then it'll grow, you let it grow. And how long do you have to wait until it grows to a certain amount, right? We can answer those types of questions. Well, fine, let's do that. Let's make up an example. You deposit $100 into an account that gives you 5%. Very generous. So you deposit $100 that has an interest rate of 5%. How long will you need to wait? How much do we want to make? Until we have, all of a sudden you deposit it, but then we will have $167. It's a co-op. Okay, fine, you. Or did you mean 167 in interest? Ooh.
No, 67.
I'm gonna go ahead and guess it's gonna take a long time, but it might be worth the wait for $167. We'll see. Next time on Math 111. No, I wouldn't leave you on a cliffhanger like that. So we decided that I is going to be 167. If it was just a total of 167, then I would be 67, right? Take away the 100 that you initially gave, and everything extra is the amount of interest. But now we flipped the script and we said, okay, fine. I is going to be 167. I'm not sure I want to know how long it's going to take. The initial that you deposited, or the initial amount, I didn't do a color for P. That was silly. I didn't do a color for T. I guess I just saw the color for I. That's okay. The principal amount, or what did they call it? Yeah, was $100. The rate, we need to take that 5% and convert it to 0.05. Right, and so R is 0.05. And we want to solve for T. Fair enough. I'll do it off to the side here. I equals PRT from the formula. So we're going to force I to be 167. P is 100. R is 0.05. And then we have to solve for T. I'd say the math isn't, the craziest thing. It's knowing which formula to plug it into so that you can solve for things. That's the pickle. So what are you gonna do? 100 times 0.05. I like to do that first so that I'm just dividing by one number. And 100 times 0.05 is 5. And I guess I need another page. Oh my gosh. Do you see on the side here, it's not showing anything that I've written? Where is it? Just close it. Try it again. It worked. So now, nice and slow, T is going to be 167 over 5, or and T is in years, 33.4 years worth of weight, potentially. But you'd have $167 that you didn't have before. So it's pretty good. Nice. So as long as you have 3 out of the 4 components, you can solve for the 4th one. Okay. So here, given 3 out of 4 components of I, P, R, or T, we can solve for the 4th. Wait, 4. I had not written that all over reading break. So this class this morning, my hand just was not cooperating. It was like a mess. Got better during the day, I guess. Not good, never claiming good, but better. So kind of move around this formula and given any of the 3, consult for the 4th. Usually we're interested in kind of the total amount, right? So not just the amount of interest, but the initial amount that you invested and the interest, which is going to be the accumulated value, which usually Usually we call it the future value, FV. But she's decided, no, I'm going to call it the accumulated value, A. Okay, so I'm learning. But it's an old dog, new trick situation up here. So the total amount A, which is also called the accumulated value, it makes sense. And what's nice about not using FV is FV makes it look like there are two components to mean one thing. So I understand the drive to just use one letter. I'm just having a hard time. A, you kind of take a step back. Okay, you've invested some initial amount P, right? And you've earned some amount of interest I. Then at the end of that investment term, you're going to have P plus I accumulated, right? And so that's what this says. A is P plus I. But I, from up here, we could also replace I with PRT. Doesn't that sound like a Michael Jackson song? PRT. No. Maybe. I think it might be kind of inappropriate for class. But I thought it, so I had to say it. That's how it works. So we can replace I with PRT, right? Kind of break down and really kind of eliminate that I now. So we don't really need to know I, right? Going back to that same scenario of, okay, well, did we want 167 in interest? Or did you want a total of 167, which would be your accumulated amount, which would be your 100 initial deposit plus your amount of interest, 67 in that case, right? We said, no, give me more interest. But now we can incorporate both in A. Okay? And so A, if we take apart, this is A here. Well, I should use a different color. A, if it's P plus P times R times T, okay, then you can pull out a common multiple of P to simplify it, right? Otherwise, you'd have to put in $100 plus $100 times R times T, and that's, you know, more math than you need to do. And so the formula that we'll be using and that I'll give you on your formula sheet, this is where I start making notes to myself, and then best intentions after class, go compile them somewhere, but probably just do it before the test. I know myself. Oh, and I'm looking at all this pink. I had to wear my pink shirt today because it's pink shirt day tomorrow, and I didn't want you guys to think that I was pro-bullying. I'm anti-bullying. That's why I wear a pink shirt. There's some deductive reasoning there, right? If you don't wear a pink shirt, then flashbacks to logic, all right? Whew. Okay. Oh. So, how do we know all these components, right? The only new thing here is A. We already defined P as the principal amount, right? Or the initial amount that you've invested. R is the interest rate, and T is the time in years, right? So those things stay the same. And now we've just introduced this A, which is the accumulated value, right? Or usually I might default to the future value, but I'm trying. So now, you're going to see that the question specifies that we have simple interest. Okay? So today we're going to introduce simple interest, and we introduce these concepts that, okay, we can put money in the bank and then it grows, and then it's not just worth 100, it's worth 167 or something like that. So we start with simple interest. Okay? And then on Thursday, will build up to compound interest. So it's a little bit more sophisticated, right? But one of the things to pay attention to is that it says simple interest, right? And that's more to get in the groove of, okay, this is a simple interest problem, which means on your formula sheet, you want to be in the simple interest section, which would have this on here. I'll also give you the I formula, this guy here, of course. Ursula borrows $600 for 5 months at a simple interest rate of 15% per year. Find the interest and the total amount she is obligated to pay. She is obligated to pay. They phrased it as a question, but it's not really. So. How about, I'll let you give it a go. It looked like you were already starting, so. Yeah, let's start. Are you guys bracing?
No, I was just sitting at the bottom since I was explaining why.
Looked like there was a showdown going down.
There's always a show.
Mm.
Oh, no. I don't.
So you need to pick out P, R, and T, right? It doesn't really matter if you're solving for I, right? I, which is PRT, right? Or A, which is P times 1 plus R times T. So you need the same components. So I is PRT and A is P times 1 plus R times T. There's a couple of different ways that you could tackle this, right? I actually like to ignore the I component, right? I don't love solving for that on its own, but kind of depends on what you like. So how I like to solve for it is I like to solve for A, and then I just take away the initial amount, right, for the amount of interest. And so, yeah.
So that's 1 plus RT?
Yes, that guy here.
That's 1.
1.
Okay.
So, yeah, 1. Is it this guy that's making a mess? 1. Didn't. It's the best I can do. 1 plus R times T. Or A is P plus I. You want. Right? So however you want to solve this, it's fine by me, right? As long as you end up with the same amount of interest that I get and the same accumulated amount, there's nothing wrong with how you solved it. In fact, I think it's a good exercise to kind of take a step back and think about how you just kind of naturally thought to solve the problem, right? And then just kind of stick with that, right? Nurture that. So I'll show you just the plain way and say I is PRT. Since it asks for I, I'm going to solve for I. So I is 600 times 0.15 times, and did you remember to turn your T into years? 5/12. Nice, that was a little sneaky. I guess the percentage too, but let me drop the percentage, divide by 100. So I get 600 times 0.15 times 5 divided by 12. I get 3750. If we're dealing with money, which I is an amount of money, right? It's nice to have 2 decimal places, right? And so just makes it look nicer. It always throws me off. You know those cool coffee shops that only do 1 decimal place for money? It's confusing though. It's $7.50, yes, but doesn't make sense to me. I don't like seeing it. Okay, and then A, well, since we just found I, let's see P plus I. You could think about it that way, right? And so A is 600 plus the 3750. So 63750. Or if you prefer, A is P times 1 plus R times T. So then A is 600 times 1 plus 0.15 times 5/12. 0.15, so it's important that you do the 0.15 times 5/12 before you add it to 1, right? And so here, let's do this first, right? BEDMAS, we have to do multiplication and division first before we can do the addition. So in my work, I'll show this step. You don't have to, but just to highlight, you still need to do it, even if you don't show it. And so we get A is 600 times 1 plus 0.0625. And plus 1, then, okay, fine. 600 times 1.0625. What a surprise. The accumulated amount should be the same, right? We're just doing it different ways, all right? In fact, I would have probably started here and found the accumulated value and then lobbed off the initial 600 to find the amount of interest, right? So there's kind of lots of different routes you can take. Usually not something people like in math, but that's okay. It's just problem solving. And so from here, we could solve for I by saying A is P plus I, and A was 637.50. P was 600 plus I. So then I must be 3750. Two ways to do the same thing. Nice. Any questions about that one?
If you were to show all these steps on a test, would you get screwed up on like one part, would you get partial marks or would you get no marks?
Oh no, I definitely work through, like if for some reason, you know, you added a 0 here and you use 0.015, right? Usually little, I call them typos, right? A typo, I take a half a mark off, but as long as you follow through and everything kind of makes sense after that, then I'm happy with that. So it's just minimal marks off, as long as you follow through, right? Yeah. But
I know later on, like, you have to read the question really carefully. 'Cause you
Yeah.
could use a wrong formula.
yeah, so as long as you kind of, I know the ones you're thinking of, and as long as you show me how you have interpreted the question, and I'll show you how to do that, then as long as you follow through with that, and it makes, you know, some sense, then you can keep a fair amount of marks, right? So, because I mean, how are you supposed to know that you misinterpreted the question in the test? Right. Jose deposited 2,500 in an account that pays 6% simple interest. So again, it specifies simple interest. And so that's how you'll know later on when we move beyond simple interest that it's not, that it is simple interest. And so we only have 2 formulas really so far. How much money will he have at the end of 3 years? Ooh. That sounds like an accumulated amount, right? We want to know, okay, how much money, which I interpret as the total, the accumulated amount. Okay. And so here, let's see here. So that tells me I want to solve for A. Okay. I'm told that, or we're given, the initial amount is $2,500. The interest rate is 6%, so 0.06. And T is already in years, right? And so T is 3. And if I want to solve for A, I'm going to use the A formula. You can use PRT, solve for I, add it to P. It's going to be the same, right? But because I've already determined, okay, I want an A, let's just jump right into it. A is P times 1 plus R times T. I always want you to show me your empty formula, especially for this stuff. Okay? These formulas are not so bad, but they do get a little bit bigger as we go on. And so if you've kind of copied it out wrong or something like that, again, that's just a typo. It's no big deal. How are you supposed to know, right? So just tell me what you're going to use to plug things into, and you can keep as many marks as you deserve. Let's pump that up here. So A, now it's just a matter of plug and chug, right? P is 2,500. 1 is 1. R is 0.06. Oops, 0.06 times T is 3. Making sure you do that 0.06 times 3 first, then add it to 1. 0.06 times 3 is 0.18 plus 1, putting me at A is 2,500 times 1.18. So after 3 years, you'll have a whopping $2,950. How much did he earn in interest? Well, 2950 minus 2500 is $450. Right? So we don't really need that I formula. It's just a nice place to start. Nice. Okay, doing great. Darnell, sorry, read it as Daniel. Darnell owes a total of $3,060, which includes 12% interest for the 3 years he borrowed the money. Okay, and so this has already incorporated the 12% interest. Okay. How much did he originally borrow? Now, when we're reading this problem, I would say it's not obvious right away that that 3060 is the A, right? But as I keep going, there are clues, right? And so when it asks how much did he originally borrow, that kind of points me in the direction of, okay, that sounds like, well, I know the initial amount or the principal is P, right? And so that means I have to solve for P, which means 3060 can't be P, we have to look elsewhere, right? And then you can kind of talk yourself into it, right? And so here we've got, so how much did he originally borrow? That's going to be P, right? And so here we have A is 3060. Although A is nice to think about accumulated wealth, right? It can also be accumulated debt, right? And often it is accumulated debt. And so Darnell owes a total of 3060, which includes, so A is 3060 and, or 3060, I shouldn't say 3060. We're told R is 0.12 and T is 3 years. I would say as a general kind of workflow, read the problem, right? And then figure out what the question's asking you to do, right? And that'll kind of point you in the right direction of what the other components that you should have are, right? Because in the formula, A equals P times 1 plus R times T, just as for I equals PRT, right? As long as I have 3 out of these 4 components, I can solve for the 4th, right? So in this case, I have 3060 is my A. P is the one I'm trying to solve for, times 1 plus R is 0.12 and T is 3. I'm going to simplify the 1 plus 0.12 times 3 first. And so 0.12 times 3 is 0.36 plus 1. So then I have P times 1.36, which means P is 3060 divided by 1.36. So P 3060 divided by 1.36. What did he borrow? $2,250. Ouch. How much did he have to pay in interest? 12% interest for 3 years. Or maybe I should phrase it as a question, otherwise you might get confused. How much did he have to pay in interest? Well, you can use the formula, or you can just kind of talk your way into it. Right, he had to pay a total of 3,060, but he only borrowed 2,250. So everything between those, that's all interest that he had to pay. Right, and so, or if you use the formula, we can solve for I as 3060 minus 2250. Oops, 3060. $810 in interest, which would be 12% of simple interest for 3 years on $2,250. Whenever I teach these sections, it makes me not want to get any loans. Like, oof. Nice. Things like this. A Visa credit card company charges a 1.5% finance charge each month on the unpaid balance. If Martha owed $2,350 and has not paid her bill for 3 months, how much does she owe now? And so let's think about, okay, how much does she owe now? What are we trying to solve for here? That's going to be an A, right? Because we have our initial outstanding amount, and then now she hasn't paid her bill for 3 months. So this is going to be A. P is PRT. $2,350, and the rate 1.5, so 0.015, and T is 3 months or 3/12 of a year. So A is P times 1 plus R times T. $2,350 times 1 plus 0.015 times 3/12 of a year. Oops. Oh boy, did I do it now? I did. What did I do? I mucked it up. Each month, which means our T should be in months. I don't like that kind of question. I want T to always be in years. Yeah. And so, all right. I should do it in red, really punish myself. Three months. Tricky. I don't like that. I will always force you to have T in years. What's the alternative solution? What could you do? You could take 1.5% and multiply it by 12, right? And then T would have to be in years, right? But they have to match. This feels like the simplest solution, but they'll be equivalent. Okay. Now I continue as if nothing happened. 0.015 times 3 plus 1 times 2350. $2,455.75 is what she owes now after 3 months. Only 3 months. Which to me feels like a lot, right? 1.5% doesn't sound like that much, right? But it's 1.5% each month. And then 3 months later, she's paying, well, how much in interest? Minus 2350. She's paying $105.75 in interest. I won't write that, but you can see it. Just because I want to keep it so that I'm not adding on to all the questions. Just keep them nice and simple. Okay. Besides how I mucked that up. But I also, yeah, I will make sure that T has to be in years. The rate will be in years. Yeah. Well, it's like I drill something into you and then it's not. No, not really my style. Did you guys like doing just the test questions were from the textbook? Okay. Kind of hampers my creativity, but works for me. Can keep doing that.
I appreciate you restricting your creativity.
Yeah.
Let me take note of that.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Appreciate it.
I shouldn't complain. It makes my job a lot easier. But so the test questions will be from the textbook again. Which you'll have done half of them. So. Which ones do you think I grabbed from? No, I feel like, did anyone go back and look? Oh, I guess that you just got them back. I can't remember if I took mostly from the ones that you had done or mostly from the ones that I had done. Can't remember. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason, just if I liked the question or not. Ooh, could be anything. Okay. How are we doing for? Doing good. Although that one's behind, I know that. Okay. So just like we saw, or sort of like we saw with this question here, where Darnell owes a total of $3,060, which has already incorporated the 12% interest. We can talk about that kind of more officially, where banks deduct simple interest from the loan amount at the time that the loan is made. So similar, but a little bit different, where they don't just add on the interest amount, they take it away from the amount that you get to borrow. Okay? And so when this happens, we say that the loan has been discounted. The interest that's deducted is called the discount, and the actual amount that's given to the borrower is called the proceeds. And so you get some, so you go and borrow $2,000, but you only get 1,750 or something because they've already taken the interest that they wanted. Is he out there? The amount of the borrower is obligated to repay is called the maturity value. So we're gonna bring in some formulas Maybe I need to split this up. Hang on. Because it doesn't wrap around the page. Copy. Please stay on the line. Crop top. I know it was a cough, but bless you. We kind of stopped saying Robitussin when someone coughed. You guys remember those commercials? We were supposed to start saying Robitussin when someone coughed. Robitussin. Nice. Huh?
I do remember.
Yeah, we were still watching TV.
That's hilarious.
Commercials.
It's like this morning, she's like, here's a Seinfeld reference. And I was like, there. And it was like, me and Brianna. So,
Hey, there's no way. Everyone's seen Seinfeld, but maybe that's me being old. No, thank you. If you kind of squint a little bit, this looks like what formula? I equals PRT. They just changed the name, which is kind of confusing to me, but that's okay, right? And so this looks like I equals PRT, right? Just in a different form. And it's just the interpretation that's changed, right? And so the amount of interest deducted, okay, is D, okay? And so here, let's see here. Notice it is similar to I equals PRT. D is the amount of interest deducted. Which is called the discount. M is the maturity value. But it's also, if an amount M is borrowed for a time, let's say M is the amount borrowed. Kind of similar to the principal amount. Right? And so this is called the maturity value. Yeah, I'm locking that in. And I'm gonna sit down because Whee! Slam my bag. I'm down here. Okay. R is the rate per year. Okay. And then, of course, T has to be in years. Okay. But now they're specifying that R has to be the rate per year. And I guess that's the part that I kind of flubbed on. R is the rate per year, and T is the number of years. or some fraction. These two are from earlier, or same as earlier. Right, R and T haven't changed. The proceeds, now this is the part that I don't like. Why is she using P in a different way? The proceeds P, the actual amount the borrower gets is going to be M minus D. Okay, and so the amount borrowed minus the amount of interest that's deducted, right? Kind of take a step back, then that makes sense, right? The amount borrowed minus the deduction is the amount that you get to walk out of the bank with, okay? Which makes sense. It's still the same P as before, okay? It's just that now, instead of adding interest, they've already deducted it. So that's hence the subtraction here. Okay? But from before, and we kind of use the same method, right? The only thing to really pay attention to here is that you've got this subtraction here instead. Okay? We can replace D with MRT from earlier. And then we can pull out a common M, right? And then we have 1 minus R times T. Okay. Whereas before we had 1 plus R times T, where we were adding interest, right? Now we're deducting interest from some amount borrowed. Now let's see here. Notice the subtraction. We are deducting some amount of interest. We are deducting some amount of interest. Oops. Instead of adding interest, as in A is P times 1 plus R times T. And so those would be the differences. In terms of emphasis, I'm going to emphasize that you know how to solve A equals P times 1 plus R times T problems because they're more common, right? And so if you don't like the discounts and proceeds that we're doing now, that's okay. You don't have to like them. We'll do the odd one. Okay. They call it P. Okay. Francisco borrows $1,200 for 10 months at a simple interest rate of 15% per year. Determine the discount and the proceeds. Yeah. The discount is D. And so I'm going to jot that down here. So determine the discount and the proceeds, which is a different, sort of a different P, right? But you're going to be solving for P in the light of the discounts instead. Which means we need to solve for D, right? which needs MRT. And let's see here. Let's jot down what we have. M, R, and T. M was what? M is the amount borrowed. And so he borrows $1,200. At a rate of 15% per year, so 0.15. And T is 10 months. 10 over 12. This is very, very similar to what we did in that, not the first example that we made up, but the second or the real example, right? Or you had to find I, and then you had to find the accumulated amount. And just like before, there are kind of multiple ways of solving this thing, right? But knowing that you're trying to find D and trying to find P in terms of discounts and proceeds, right? That's kind of gonna guide the way here. D is MRT. So if we just kind of brute force this thing, right? No fancy turns here. Let's just solve for D. But if you're feeling fancy, maybe you solve it a different way. And as before, as long as we end up in the same place, right, with the same results, that's great, you did it. 0.15 times 10 divided by 12 times 1,200. So the amount that they need to kind of withhold of the 1,200 is $150. Right? And so really, Francisco's only going to get $1,200 minus that discounted amount of 150, and that will be his proceeds. Okay. And so from here, right, we can do the proceeds is P or M minus D, right? We have M and we just found D, so we can find it that way. Okay. So P is 1,200 minus 150. Gotta double check. My mental math is not good. 1,050. Or if you prefer, you could say P is M times 1 minus R times T. Which is 1,200 times 1 minus, I think it was 0.15 times 10 over 12. 10 over 12 times 0.15. 1 minus that times 1,200. Well, what do you know? 1,050. Which is the same. The reason I'm not changing the notation for P is because this is the same P that we had before, right? This is the principal amount that they borrowed. Okay. It's just that now we're calling it the proceeds. And then if we added on the amount of interest that he would have to pay, right? Then you would get back to the 1,200, right? So you can kind of work between the two. if Francisco wants to receive $1,200 for 10 months at a simple interest rate of 15% per year, what amount of loan should he apply for? And so he doesn't just need 1,050, he actually needs 1,200, right? And so then what amount of loan should he apply for where they're gonna take away the amount of interest first? Let's think about it. Think about it, think about it. First thing you want to do, right, is kind of convince yourself what it is you're trying to solve for, right? What component are you trying to solve for? And so here, what amount of loan should he apply for? That's going to be, let's go back to here. That's going to be your P, your proceeds, which I'm noticing I didn't define here. Uh-oh. Can I just underline it here? Sneaky. So the proceeds is the amount that you actually get, right? And so now he's saying, okay, whoa, I didn't want 1,050, right? I didn't want just 1,050. I actually needed the full 1,200. So now what do I need to pay you, right? And so here, this is going to be your P. And sorry. M. Sorry about that. We're forcing this to be our P. P is 1,200. R is still 0.15 and T is still 10/12. We want to solve for M. We've got a couple of different ways that we could do it, right? Let's see here. What amount of loan should he apply for? Okay. I think I would probably just jump right in and say, okay, well, P is, I have P, I'm trying to solve for M, and I have R and I have T, right? And so this seems like a reasonable jump. So first I'm going to simplify the 1 minus 0.15 times 10/12. You could read this, so M times 0.875, you could read it if you wanted to as 87.5% of M. And so you could do that, right? Because that's 15% for 10/12 of a year, right? And so you could think of it that way, and that is what we're doing, right? But you don't have to, you can just plow through and say, okay, M is going to be 1,200 divided by 0.875. you'd actually need to pay 1,371.428571. You know I'm obsessed with decimal places. So I like to show all of them and then my final answer to 2 decimal places. 43 pennies. Nice. So he would actually need to borrow $1,371.43 in order to get 1,200. How much will he have paid in interest? Well, 1,371.43 minus 1,200. Whoops. I lost it. $171.43. Nice. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna finish this section. Now what? Got options. Keep going. Introduce compound interest, might be fun. Or you can work on the problems for this section. Okay, we'll put off compound interest for Thursday, but it might be nice to solidify the work that we did. Oh, and before I quit the recording here, I did notice, and yes, I did print out the textbook because I'm so old. That, but only the sections we're using. I didn't go nuts or anything. That they do all the section problems. So only do the 6.1 ones. I don't know, that's like there's like multiple pages of problems, but they're for the entire chapter. For some reason, they're all crammed in there. So same as before, I'll set up drop boxes for completion marks. You do the even numbers? I can't remember. I do the odd ones. You do the even ones. No exceptions for this one. So, well, I mean, you could do all of them. They're all up for grabs on the test anyways. But I'll do the odd ones and post the solutions. Nice. All right. With that, I release you to do whatever you need to do with your life. And I'm going to stop the recording. And you can get ready for compound interest on Thursday.